positive decision if they find that they were also obligated to make those payments or taxed on those payments as well.
Any other questions for Paul? Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Our city clerk would please call our next and last item.
We have two contracts. The first is discussion of contract with Rick Pruitt's FAICP for the purpose of providing professional services to develop a transfer of development rights ordinance for the Regional Activity Center sub-area as defined within the Highway 9 Georgia 400 Master Plan. And then also discussion of contract with the firm of Tennell, Spangler and Associates, Inc. for the purpose of providing professional planning services for the Deerfield area. These are being presented by Ms. Kathy Field.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, if you remember when the Crabapple Visioning Plan was passed, at that time it was determined that in order to implement that plan, the existing Crabapple overlay zone would not be appropriate for the implementation of that plan, and therefore we undertook the form-based code and the transfer of development rights for the Crabapple area. Well, similarly, we have now finished the LCI study for the Highway 9 Georgia 400 area, and that the LCI study identified several character areas. And as we look at moving forward to implement these character areas and looking at the zoning that is in place, staff has evaluated each of those character areas and feels that the area identified to be a regional activity center, which is that area in purple, south of Webb Road and down right in there, is really an area that calls for increased density at a level that we feel the existing zoning that's there would really not implement the vision for that particular character zone. And we would propose and seek your feedback this evening to see if you would like staff to move forward for that area in terms of developing a form-based code with a section including transfer development rights where we could identify certain receiving areas within that character area to receive transfer development rights, pretty much as we did in Crabapple. But we would do it again for this particular character area. If we are interested in doing that, I would suggest that we use the same team that we used for Crabapple, being Rick Pruitt's for the transfer development rights segment, as well as Caleb Rassico from Tennell, Spangler, Walsh to do the form-based code for us. So that's here for your discussion and your input in terms of what your thoughts are.
Sure.
Yeah, if I'm seeing that right, the purple area, actually a lot of those areas extend beyond the city limits, right? Is that white line right there?
There's some area down here, which is Alpharetta.
Right.
Yes. And then
That's Windward, that line that road that's going right there that you were just pointing at, is that correct? No, that one. Yeah, okay.
So south of Windward and then where the Cracker Barrel is, that's Alpharetta. And then we're only talking about up to here, Webb Road. This is brown. It's hard to see the differentiation. This is purple, this is brown. This is identified as a transitional area. And could be in the future, if that intersection up here gets put in place, that might be a future candidate for another form-based code, but right now it's transitional, and the zoning that's there I think is fairly adequate. The only other area that we thought had a small problem to it is the Route 9 area, in that where the zoning, the Route 9 overlay that was done, that zoning would be good for implementation. However, there's one piece of that we would like to have reviewed, and that is the fact that there's a limit of 2 stories on development on Route 9. And in Crabapple, you've got 3 stories, and here you've got this is a major state highway, and it's limited to 2 stories. So we thought that that's something that we would want to look at. The thought would be to to use the same stakeholder group that was used to develop this LCI plan, and to use them to assist with the implementation for a new zoning for the Regional Activity Center, and look at this Route 9 issue in terms of the height.
Good question.
Matt?
Obviously, since that's an area that with the LCI plan was going to be more dense, where would the sending areas be located?
It would be the area zoned AG1 within the city.
Citywide,
Within the
yeah.
whole city? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So identical to what we did for
Right.
Crabapple.
Same thing.
Precisely. Yeah.
Bill? Okay.
How much undeveloped land do we have? Because that looks like it's a pretty small area. How much of that area is undeveloped, and do we need to expand the area that we're looking at?
Yeah, well, we've got two major parcels, clearly the one next door, which is not
Right.
developed yet, and then.
I mean, I hate to do a whole plan just for one parcel.
Yeah, but also, there's some, if you look at Verizon, for instance, which is very undeveloped in that you've got 3 vertical buildings with a lot of parking area. I think there is lots of opportunity for infill here to better utilize the space, to perhaps build a parking deck, and then you could use some of the existing parking spaces. But it's an area that has the infrastructure is in place, and it just sort of calls to maximize the development of it. So, yes, I agree with you. There's only a couple of big greenfield sites, but there's a lot of other potential sites, I think, that we could certainly work on in terms
I
of.
mean, I would just like us to consider more than just that small area if we're going to do this.
Okay.
And maybe it's different zones and they have different things, but not
Yeah.
just limit it to just a small area, and consider the fact that a lot of the other stuff, especially north of there, may end up being developed one of these days.
Would you like this area? It was identified as a transitional area. Would your thinking including all the way from here to there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that it's all developed exactly the same way, just like in Crabapple, it's
that's right.
different. But yet, we look at that whole area.
Yeah, and there's, on Webb Road, when you go across Highway 9, there's quite a bit of land there,
Yeah,
as well as up at Bethany Bend and Highway 9. There's some property to the northwest. Yeah,
and there's even some right north of here.
right.
That's, so I think it just needs to be expanded a little bit to not be just quite so narrow of an area.
Well, at least it'd be worth looking at. I mean, if we're going to take a look at it, we ought to look at the entire overlay area, and then if you guys think that it doesn't make any sense to expand beyond a certain limit, then that's fine.
Well, we're happy to do that. We were trying
Because
to
I
be-
agree, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense limiting buildings here to be 2 stories where Crabapple we allow 3 stories. I mean, it just,
Bill?
What would you suggest then? You have a contract here crafted already that's just including the area that you called out here. Would you suggest going ahead with that at this point in time, then picking up these other areas like Karen and Joe spoke of? I think I'd like to see a comprehensive study of the entire area rather than doing it piecemeal, but I'd like to get something going right now. I think we're on a roll as far as.
Well, I think our consultants can certainly step up to your challenge to look at the whole area, and I think the contract. And actually, I have to say that the consultants originally thought I wanted to do the whole area, and I said no. I'm just really going to look at and bring forward the regional activity center. So I think I could easily convert back to getting a proposal from them that would include the whole area, if that's the feeling of the council.
I'd like to
The council.
I'd like to see them going ahead with the RAC at this point and just expand it.
Is there anything that keeps us from looking at the crossroads in Birmingham at the same time?
Well, that's a disjoint.
I was just curious.
Did you hear that question, Kat?
That'll be next.
Let me address that.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Kind of where I get my level of comfort here.
is that we've got to be able to, number one, acquire these services, but we've got to acquire them within the guidelines of our purchasing policy, right? I was a bit of a stretch even to allow this one to go forward because it felt as though we were kind of on the tail end of doing one and then redoing another one. I got Ken comfortable with it, or Ken and I got comfortable with bringing this one forward. I'm not, though. I got to tell y'all, I'm not comfortable just doing, consistent $20,000 contracts. That's going to, sooner or later, that violates the spirit of that $30,000 cap in the ordinance. You don't just get to keep tacking things on top of each other in sequence. If you want to go bigger, bigger's fine. I think big is good. But I think what we would do if you want to go bigger is we would actually define a scope and we would put it out to an RFP just so we stay true to our purchasing policies.
Right. I'm just asking the question. It wasn't.
Yeah.
So if you want to go bigger, I think we need to break this one down, put the brakes on this, get it bigger, and then go to an RFP.
What is this one here?
These are in the neighborhood of 22, 21, 22.
Chris, your concern is that
Which
what we're doing is we're not breaking the work down into chunks, $20,000 chunks. It's really one big project, and we're just making it look like a bunch of $20,000 projects.
That's what I don't want it to be.
Right.
No, I understand. I guess I don't see that. That's what we were doing, but it's better to be safe than sorry when it comes to that.
And if this one were at 22, and all of a sudden we get this one done, and then because we like the product, we decide we want to do it at the Crossroads. So then I come back to you with another 22, with these two people and want to use them again, and then we decide, we want to do Bethany Bend, and I come back to you with another 22. I don't know that there's anything necessarily wrong with that. I just think that it
smells.
right. We get outside of our. We get outside of the spirit, I think, of our purchasing policies. Where if we want to do all that, I'm good with that. But let's just throw it to the market so that we don't have to defend our decision of who we selected to do the work.
You could always throw it out to bid again.
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely. If speed is of the essence and we wanted to get working on this fast, I think the contract as it's written is probably the contract we have to go with because it's kind of right there. But if you all say make it bigger, Chris, we'll make it bigger. And that doesn't mean it's going to take a whole lot of time, but we do need to write an RFP and let the market drive the selection of who does the work.
Yes. Go ahead.
So, if we go through an RFP, we're talking several months to go through the process, shortlist, then I guess we could go directly to selection. Whether we're going to qualify on qualifications only and then go to some sort of short list of.
Depends on the number of people. Our best start to finish with an RFP is about 90 days. That's about as fast as you can do it, and actually end up with somebody that you're confident with.
Right. So also on the TDR process, the process will still be pretty much exactly the same as what was for crabapple. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. So is it necessary? Should we just pursue the form base and not right now do the? I realize that but we've already kind of defined the whole process in the last one that we did, unless I'm missing something. Is it necessary to consult again for TDRs for this?
Well, we're going to define certain receiving areas. We're also going to define what the value of those TDRs. You need an economic development specialist because the value of the land here is different than the value.
I understand.
All that. So,
okay.
A good question. I asked it myself, and I felt comfortable that we would need the services.
Okay, but I would think again putting it out for an RFP. Obviously, someone that's already done work for us, I would think would have a fairly good likelihood, but I think that's probably the best way because you could get other consultants objecting to our procurement policy if we're doing these things in chunks that look like, knowing what consultants think because I've been a consultant. So.
Bill?
I think the area that you've defined here, it's included in this contract, I think it's up for more imminent development. And I'd hate to see this get away from us without having a form-based code and in effect. I think it's more time sensitive right now. I'd like to see us move forward with it.
I would
No.
in this general area, you know, and then look at the broader, and then Birmingham Crossroads later, but, or
I think that
soon.
would give us a level, that would give me a level of comfort in making a recommendation that you all approved it.
Well, we're already, I mean, again, with what we're looking at in terms of current applications, I think we're already dealing with some pressure right now,
Agreed.
and within this area.
Agreed.
Right.
Okay, anybody else, anything on that? Okay.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, our takeaway from this is going to be to maybe modify what's coming in front of you next week for approval to include a little bit more area than what's on there? Is that, or are we leaving it with the area that?
I'd like it to include a little bit more area. I mean, again, especially if, I don't think it would cost us that much more to include just a little bit more area that needs to be included in the overall plan, because like you said, it may only be, and depending on what happens next month, we could end up only with one undeveloped site as part of the, I hate to spend $40,000 on developing a plan for one
Well,
site.
there's redevelopment to consider as well, but.
Right.
And what would
Yeah.
be the cost differential if we just did, I mean, the whole LCI overlay of what we have up there that's ours versus just that area?
I think it'll be pretty close to what's published.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Just my hunch. Okay, we'll see if we can redefine that and bring it forward so that it's not substantially different than what you all have in your packet. I wanted to have it, and this was my fault that it ended up on a work session agenda, because I wanted to make sure that before we brought it forward to you in a council meeting that you just didn't say, Chris, we think that's a crazy idea for, form-based code just doesn't fit in the Deerfield area. I wanted to make sure that that's not what y'all said. So thanks for hearing it tonight. We'll do a little tweaking and we'll bring it forward next week.
Okay.
Hi, Kathy.
Thank you.
You good? Thank you. Okay. Anybody have anything else they need to discuss or bring up?
That went way faster than I had it.
Don't say that. All right, we'll adjourn.
Cool.